She move her body like a shaman. All in my head, so much in common. Just say that word, baby, I'm on it. If this ain't love, then I don't want it. She move her body like a shaman.
Hi, welcome back to Culture Healing. So guys, today's topic is going to be a bit, I don't call it heavy, but for some people they call it heavy because they're trying to run. If you're trying to run, leave right now, because we are talking about racism in the whole and just where it comes from, what we can do, and just stop being ignorant in the whole. So you're going to be hearing a whole lot of things you don't want to hear. So if you know you don't want to go no further, leave the podcast or leave the YouTube. This ain't for you. Understand? So for the people that are here, thank you for still being here. I am joined by a brother that I was introduced by my actual brother last year for something, and I have admired his platform. He is extremely straightforward when it comes to anything political and for his people. That's one thing I do admire about his platform. So he is for his people, and he is very straightforward in what he says. He doesn't beat around the bush and say, oh, maybe because of this or maybe because of that. He is nipping it in the bud, letting you see reality. And if you don't want to face this, that's entirely up to you, because that is what we live in, reality. So without further ado, I will let him introduce himself and tell us about his platform, and if he would be interested in starting his own podcast, because that would be extremely interesting. So go ahead, sir.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Dillion Mohammed. I'm Guyanese. I'm from Guyana. I'm living in Guyana. I'm a proud Guyanese. I'm a proud pipeline too. Well, just a little about me. I'm an air traffic controller. I'm a polyglot. And I am a mixture of all of the ethnicities of Guyana.
Yes, he is. Oh gosh, yes, he is.
Today, I am going to bring to our attention the root, the cause, and the origin, three different things, of racism in the world.
True.
How it got here. And I'm going to zero in a bit on racism in certain locations, particularly the Caribbean, America, Africa, India, and China, and how it has affected us and how we can recognize it and deal with it. All right.
So this is what we're going to be discussing. And let's start in the beginning. Let's discuss the beginning of racism and how, not just how, I want to visit the beginning of racism, why white people think they are racist when in fact that also is their program, and they did not know that they themselves were also programmed with being racist. And the fact that how they treated us during slavery, and also how come Black people are so let's say disorganized amongst each other, right? So that's where we're going to be going for the beginning. So let's go into how racism starts. What is your take?
All right, so let's rewind into history to the time of the Roman Empire. Now, during the Roman Empire, and for those who don't know about Europe, Europe does have different ethnicities, even though we tend to group them all as white people. However, the people that really call themselves white and that elevate themselves above everybody else are what are the Germanic people. So these are the English, the Dutch, the Germans, the Scandinavians, the Icelandic peoples, and so on. So these are the people that brought the source of this racism, right? Some of them don't know about it now, of course. But let's look at what happened in the Roman Empire. The Romans were a very sophisticated people. They were mostly across southwestern Europe. And, you know, they had all this wealth and resources.
Let me ask you a question before we get there, before we get to the Roman Empire. So because you know how Black people are, right? They don't like to believe things unless there's proof. Understand?
Right.
And for me, that is so annoying. Where
Mm-hmm.
where did you get this information so their little lazy asses could go look for it themselves? Please.
This information is in every single world history book, world history site,
I ain't gonna look for them
European
myself.
history book, European history site. You can go and you will find this same information in every one of those.
Right. I can go and look for it and post them for them. Also, with that being said, the Romans, right? Because people might like to think that Black people did not have status and we just came from slavery. Let's clear this up and let them know that these Romans that we were talking about were actually Black people. Understand?
Yes. Yes.
So let's clear
Well,
that
they
up.
were right. They were not white. They were Mediterranean peoples. They were more like brown-skinned people with curly hair. If you look at all the Roman statues in the pictures, you will see their hair was curly, and all the rest of it. So
And their
these
features as
Roman
well.
people, right, and their features as well. These people had so much, and these Germanic people who were on the fringes and outside the borders of the Roman Empire, they were savage. They were, as it was called in history, barbarian, right? All they knew was war. And up to this day, it is something that still festers in
Their
white
DNA.
culture.
Yeah, it's in
Right,
their DNA.
right. And it's just sugar coated these days. But uh, the ultimate characteristic or feature of white culture is
It's
always to
destruction.
antagonize,
Yeah.
right? So these people, because of this savage behavior and because of of how barbarian they were, they tried to get in many times to the Roman Empire, and those that managed to get in because of their behavior were enslaved or were what's the word, indentured by the Roman Empire. Right. Now, the the whole idea, right, of them being more beautiful or more, well, they were fairer skinned, right? But they started to purport this idea that,
Of beauty.
these Germanic people were more beautiful than the Romans, even though they weren't as intelligent or they weren't as uh,
Peaceful.
industrious,
Yeah.
right, and as peaceful and as decent as the Romans, right? So they purported this idea because that was all they had to their advantage,
Their clear
right?
skin.
Right, their skin and their features and so on, particularly blue eyes. And there was a Roman emperor, sorry, that when he was approached by some of these people, Anglo-Saxons, who became the English, somebody pointed out to them, oh, look at their beauty, look at their eyes, look at their features. And he, at one point, he said, you know what, this is true. They are beautiful people. And the name Anglo, right, he compared it to them being called angels. So generally, the English people back then, they were seen by their
As
beauty
angelic.
as angelic, right? So that was the first instance where the racism started. The idea that a
Well,
particular
not
people,
racism,
well,
colorism, you should say. But
colorism,
that,
right,
yeah, that's definitely
right,
colorism.
colorism and featurism as well,
Yes.
right? And a lot of times we don't include featurism because it is a thing,
Yeah.
right?
Listen.
So then the Germanic peoples, particularly the Gothic peoples, um, decided to ransack Rome, and so they had the fall of Rome, and these people took over the rest of Europe. Right now, from then on, the Germanic people enforced their standards of beauty and their ideologies and everything else on the rest of the persons living in Europe, right? And that began the stratification of Europe. So you had people with blonder hair, lighter eyes, being more recognized and more accepted than those who had dark hair or, dark eyes, brown eyes, or darker skin, right? Even if you go to Ireland, you will see that there's what is called the Black Irish, right? The Black Irish people have actually they have black hair, like it's jet black, right? And they have less European features. They're fair skinned because they've been in Ireland for so long,
Yeah.
right? And people fail to realize that climate has an effect on features.
Let's get into it.
People fail to realize that, right? So all of this about the Black Irish people, right, and making them second class in that time was about their features. So these are kind of the origins of the racism
and let's
within Europe.
include as well, because as we were talking, I'm writing down certain things that you put, because I want to bring in photographs so people can understand as well,
right?
That Chinese, as much as stop biting me, as much as they want to deny it, their ancestors are black as well. Understand that?
Yes.
So
yes, and that
ahead.
is not just archaeologically proven. It's also linguistically evident.
Hello, somebody. Hello, so let me put that one too. One understand, right? So that is something that has been proven a lot, and some of their let's just break this down as well, because the Chinese, for me, are so much in denial that they think that their race, actually their culture, is their culture. And I want to break that bubble and let them understand that your culture, your kung fu, your monkism, that's just my word, and everything that you have, that also comes from Black people's spirituality as well. So all of these Zen stuff that you have going on came from us as well. So I want them to realize that the culture that you guys have been living is your Black ancestors' culture that you are denying, that connects to us Black people as well. So don't get that twisted.
Right, exactly. Now, if you look at the Khoisan people in Southern Africa, right, these are some of the most ancient, actually, they are the most ancient people group on the face of the earth right now. Every other people group on the earth would have been
from their line
or blend of other lines. This particular line has remained homogeneous from proto-humanity.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Now, if you see if you see what the Khoisan people look like, and you can probably put a picture of what a Khoisan man looks like.
I will.
Right. It's Khoisan, Khoisan, and they have Asian features. Look at Nelson Mandela. He's mixed with Khoisan.
Yes.
Right? They have Asian features.
I see that.
They have African features, and they have European features. So this is the prototype of humanity that everyone descended from.
From Black people.
Right.
And boom. Drop eggs, drums, every damn thing.
Everything.
Understand? You came for our line. Like, the melanin is there strong within you. It is just hidden because we are so mixed up amongst each other.
And because of climate as well.
Exactly. I see. Okay, let's break this down for some people who may not understand what he's saying. If you leave Guyana, right, a nice black chocolate beautiful man, and you go to Canada or some parts of America, Big man, you're going to come back a lighter version of your chocolate. Understand that fact? Because you're not having the sun, not burnt, but what should I say? Beautifully melanized your skin.
Right.
You're having a color climate. Your skin is going to adjust to that. All the little dirt that you're going to have, because people call it dirt. Oh gosh,
Right.
that you're going to have on your skin, but it's not dirt. It's black beautifulness. Is going to
Exactly.
fade. I
Right.
leave Guyana a lighter color, and I'm in Barbados by not lighter color, a darker color, and I'm in Barbados, and I got light though, and they don't have snow, so it's a known
Right.
fact. If you live
Right.
somewhere that
Right.
is not closest to the sun, you are
Mhm.
going to get lighter.
So getting into America now.
Yes.
Of course, there was this whole breakaway idea during I think it was during the medieval era, when
Medieval.
people were right when people were leaving Europe to explore, quote unquote, the rest of the world. Right. Some of them went to Africa. Some of them went to West. They didn't know that the American continent existed. Right. So they just went west, like they say Columbus just sailed west. Right. Some of them went to Asia. Some of them went to the Pacific, and so on. They went all over. Right. Now, during this time, they began to colonize all of the locations that they found. Right. So when the Europeans arrived in the Americas, of course, the first thing is that because they saw that the people living in the Americas, the indigenous people living in the Americas, were not as technologically and
Exactly
industrially
like them.
advanced as them. They started to look down on them, and they started to, and then too, they noticed that, oh, they're not as white as us. They're not as quote unquote beautiful as us in their features, right? Because of course the indigenous people also have the mongoloid features of the East Asians, right? So that was also one of the things that happened, right? So they went to war and tried to, of course, the typical, what do you call it? The inherent action that the white people took everywhere they went is to go to war and take over the
And
land.
own. Yeah.
And own the land, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they did in the Americas, and of course they created these states that we have now, countries. Of course, the borders
Divide
changed.
everything.
Right, the borders changed over time, different centuries, and so on. Right now, if it wasn't enough that they took the land from the indigenous people, right? The indigenous people, of course, fled to the various interior locations, especially here in South America. The indigenous people of the islands fled across to the South American continent mostly, and to Central America, right?
But let's pause.
Uh-huh.
The indigenous people of the Caribbean fled
Mhm.
to South America. I just want people
Largely.
I just want you to just put that out there though. Okay, we cousins, Caribbean people, we cousins.
We
Okay?
are, yes.
Thank you.
We
We can
are.
visit that another day. Let's continue.
Right.
Yes.
Good. So, because of that, the white people realized that it was difficult for them because the indigenous people knew the land. This was their land. So they knew where they could hide. They knew the practices they could use to evade these white people. But when they went to Africa, of course, they couldn't get the Africans to work for them as much in Africa as well. So what they decided to do is remove Africans from their homeland and to bring them in an unfamiliar land so that they have nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and they can have a ball subduing them,
Yes.
right, and making them their slaves. So that was the beginning of the slave trade. Now, in the process, they used the fact that the indigenous people were able to evade them to make the black people feel that they are inferior to the indigenous people. So this is another form of racism that is coming out. There are indigenous people that are still of the view that they are superior to black people in the Americas. even
Same
though generally we
colorism.
stand in solidarity, right,
Yeah.
against, against the white
Mm-hmm.
people, right? But there are still some that want to purport that. But of course, again, it is colonial in origin,
Mm.
right? So that's another form of racism that comes out there, again, with the same origin.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
so in the process, of course, they beat us, they, they whip us, they torture us, and they give us a belief. They
Wait,
broke our
let's
spirits.
yeah, they broke our spirits, but understand that these people, first of all, observed us before they
Right,
decide to do what they did. They didn't
right.
just, you don't just charge into somebody line and be like, I can enslave you. It don't work like that.
Right,
Understand people that these people became friends with some of us. These people
right.
learned our culture, study our
Mm-hmm,
patterns, study
mm-hmm.
our spirituality, our foods. They study all of those things. They study our marriage structure. They studied everything. They then capture our people, bring us here because they understand our connection with the land, where we come from, how the
Right,
food connects to
right,
our body, all of those
right,
things. Charge us from there, which then, if you're not eating from here, what people do not know, they're trying to get people to understand that I am in Barbados, even though my body was made in Guyana. The food and every soil in Guyana is in my body. If I do not
all
eat
right,
from the soil in Guyana, my body is not going to be as strong as it used to be. Because when I left
all
Guyana, I
right,
left my body a certain way, and I am not as strong as I used to be in Guyana, even though I am eating food from the soil that is here. Majority
all
of
right,
our foods are imported from other soil. It has no
all right,
connection with this body. Your body is
right.
electrical.
Exactly,
So when they
exactly.
drag our people from there, they took us away from our food and our land and our connection from Mother Earth. One, that's what people do not
Mm-hmm,
focus on. Then
mm-hmm,
they infiltrate what he just said. They
mm-hmm,
studied us, people. They studied us. Continue,
mm-hmm.
sir.
Yes, they did. And so, in the process, right, I was just bringing up our, or them introducing us to this belief,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now, this Christianity, because I'm very blunt, right?
Let's go. I like it. Let's go. I with you, dude. I with you.
So this Christianity that they brought to us wasn't the Christianity of the Middle East. It
Boom.
wasn't even the Christianity of Rome,
Wow, I say.
right?
Right. Thank you. Continue.
Now, this Christianity that they brought to us, right, pretty much hid or removed the concepts of justice, of equality,
All
from
right.
us, and told us,
I
turn
love
the
it when a
other
black man
cheek,
speaks.
turn the other cheek, and
Mm-hmm.
don't render evil
Obey
for
your slave
evil.
master
Slaves
so
obey
you
your masters, right?
mm-hmm.
So this is exactly the kind of Christianity that slaves were
going to put
introduced to.
the I'm going to put the actual verses there so you can see it as well. And
Right.
there is a video too that's out there that showed you how the Bible books were chosen. It wasn't
Hmm.
biblically chosen, people. It was
No, it wasn't.
literally a bunch of books on the table, and man was like, we're going to pick the first
Pick
few
this
from
and this and this.
boom.
They all have mistakes. They all have errors. They have things added and things taken away from it. I'm going to show you this in this video. We're going to prove this. But there are a lot of mistakes and errors in the Bible, which, in these manuscripts as well, which all goes back to what I was saying. God didn't obviously write this book. God didn't obviously, put a spirit on a person to get them to write the book, because it would be perfect. It will be perfectly done. There won't be no mistakes. There will not be errors, but there are. There are thousands of errors, thousands of them. So, how do you get your Bible? How do we get the Bible we have today? We all heard of the Council of Nicaea. Everybody knows about the council. We know about what was going on there and what supposedly have happened there. But what they don't tell you is the details behind what happened at the Council of Nicaea. You don't read about this kind of stuff. So when you had all of these hundreds of manuscripts that were going to be comprised to create the Bible, they had to figure out which ones to use. So a master plan was devised to create the Bible, to figure out what books are going to go in there. It was the master plan. It was genius how they figured out how they was going to get all these books in the Bible. This is what they did. Check it out. They said, we're going to take all of these hundreds of books of the Bible that are supposed to be the inspired word of God, from God. We're going to take all these books and we're going to put them under the communion table, and then we're going to leave. And when we come back in the morning, whatever books are on the top of the table, those are the books that we are going to use to put into the Bible. That's how they came up with your Bible. So how do we know this is true? Because they wrote about it. Council Papias wrote in the Synodicon, which is like a letter or a decree to the Nicene Council. He wrote that, having promiscuously put all the books that were referred to the council for determination under a communion table in a church, they, the bishops, besought the Lord that the inspired writings might get upon the table, while the sparsest ones remain underneath, and it happened accordingly. So this is how your Bible came to be. This is how they figured out what books are going to go into.
I can put it there so I can see.
let me because I went to Bible college. Let me shed some more light on it.
Boom,
These people were called the Nicene Council, the Council of Nicaea, right? And this was under the Roman Emperor Constantine, right? Who decided that he was going to make Christianity the state religion, and he was going to butcher it to make it adaptable to the empire, and to make it a form that he can use to control the people.
All right.
So this is exactly how Christianity was formed. There are a lot of books, and I've read some of them that were banned from the Bible.
Thank you.
Because they actually sell the secrets out.
But you know the names
in
of
some
them
cases.
because I have been. This is like side note. I have been looking and I can't find them online.
So there's the Book of Enoch.
All right, I know that one.
So the Book of Enoch talks about white supremacy, actually.
Got it.
It suggests that Noah was the first white man, and Noah was the first to be born with white skin and blue eyes. And at that point, the ancestors of Noah were horrified that he was so white and that his eyes were so blue, and they wondered if he was born of these sons of God that came down in Genesis 6. Right. And these sons of God these were actually demons, if you know the story.
Yeah.
Right. So if you read the Book of Enoch, even if you read Genesis 6, you will know the story good. Right. So that was one book. Then there was the Book of Jubilees.
All right.
Is another one.
Jubilees.
The Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Am I calling too fast?
No. Cause the name's registering, right? So I with you, cause these are things that are mentioned in subliminal ways in the Bible, though.
In the Bible, exactly. Right. And the thing about it is that verses from these banned books are quoted. For example, in Jude, there is a quote, I think in verse 14. Jude is one chapter, so it just has verses. I think in verse 14, 15, the Book of Enoch is actually quoted. So it shows you the interconnectedness and how they butchered the ancient manuscripts. Right. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the whole translation issue, which that's for a whole next podcast.
Listen, I want to get into that specifically. I want to get into that so badly because I need people to understand that first of all, some of the English words that we are using were adjusted back in the 80s and the 90s to now. And just a few years ago, some of the words were adjusted again. So things kept breaking.
They have different meanings.
Thank you. You know what I mean? So pay attention. These are things that are so obvious. It is in front of everyone's face, and that is why I am like, don't no one see this? This is literally there.
Right. Exactly. It's right in
Right.
front of your eyes.
Continue with this for the Christianity and the breakdown and stuff. I want people to get this because people think that, oh, you're conspiracy theorists and you don't believe in Christianity because this is a wave and you're going to go to hell. Boo. There is no such thing as hell.
All right.
Understand?
Let me give you an example, an experience of how I know that this is not. You see, what happens to you, it's not a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to you in your personal circle is a reflection of what happens in the world.
Yeah.
I started a job. I'm still an air traffic controller now. Back then, I was training, and I think I was on the job at the time, on the job training, and what I noticed was that there was a bunch of people on the job. Right, I was quiet. I never really said much during training because you just observe and learn what goes on in
Thank
the work
you.
culture.
That is what a smart person does. You study your
Right.
people before you speak, and that's what they did to us. Example.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I observed was that there was one set of people that were above any sort of retribution or any sort of sanction, whereas there was another set of people that were basically every minute for frivolous things, being sanctioned and written and sent home and so on. So that was one of the first things I noticed. When I examined the makeup of the two groups, one group was mostly Indian, one group was mostly African. And you can guess which is which.
They're putting it in your work structure and you don't even see it.
Exactly. So it was institutional at the time, and this was 2015. This was when
5 years ago.
Right. This was when that election that we all waited for just happened. So I walked into a job experiencing the tail end of the previous government. Right. Now, I don't want to be too political, but those who know the politics of Guyana would know that that particular government was a promoter of this.
A bunch of trash. I don't really care. They were a bunch of trash.
Exactly.
Understand?
Right. So they promoted this this racial divide. Right. Now, in 2016, right, we still had the previous director general in the workplace from the previous government, who was affiliated to the previous government. In 2016, the system changed, right? We got a new director general, right? As a matter of fact, this director general, of course, he's Guyanese, but he lived in Jamaica most of his life. You can say he's Jamaican. He was actually a Jamaican citizen.
You got to.
Right. So
from birth? From birth?
No,
he grew
naturalized.
Up there?
He grew up there.
Okay.
He was naturalized.
Right. So he
was born here in Guyana.
Okay, but he left and go there.
Right.
So he has that type of culture within him.
Right.
Okay.
So when he came to Jamaica, when he came to Guyana from Jamaica.
We got you. Uh-huh.
Right. One of the first things is that he observed the divide. And so, of course, the first thing that was looked at, and of course he would have relayed that to the government, the new government, the first thing that they would have looked at is revamping the system. Because, of course, if you don't have policies that forbid discrimination or racism, people are going to have a field day with it.
Yeah.
And that was the advantage that the previous government was taking. So I was personally on a project that they created specifically to boost the compliance of the organization with international regulations. Now, mind you, these international regulations are UN regulations. They're not American or British or EU, right? These are the UN regulations. Now, people generally don't understand the difference between the UN. People tend to group them all together. The UN and the EU and the international community, right? They are not the same. One in particular is more interested in equality and justice around the world, which is the UN.
Right.
The UN, right? Even though it's sort of stifled a bit because the UN gets most of its funding from the US, right? So that there is a problem, right? The UN, of course, it does a lot of charitable work. It promotes peace and harmony, but some of it is stifled because of where the money is coming from, right? So that's a big problem in the world. However, the EU and the international community, the EU is part of the international community, which would be America, Britain, Canada. We call them A, B, C, EU, AU. America, Britain, Canada, the EU, and Australia. Right now, these are the people that look after the interests of the colonizers.
Yeah.
Right, because these are the strongholds of the colonizers. Right, these are their places. Now, if you look at, for example, I'm gonna divert just a bit here. If you look at Eastern Europe, right, countries like Bosnia and Serbia and so on, particularly in the Balkans, these countries have been having serious trouble with the EU, and it's obvious that most of it is because of so these Slavic peoples were the slaves. If you look at the word Slav, they were called Slavs at first, and this is the origin of the word slave.
Slave.
Right. So these people, the Russians, the Czechs, the Polish, the Ukrainians, the Belarusians, Bulgarians, all these people are Slavs. These were the slaves of Europe during the Germanic rulership. Right. So when I say the Germanic rulership, this was when Britain and Germany and France
were one,
and the Holy Roman Empire had the power in Europe. Right. Good. So this was, so these people are still being marginalized in Europe. Right. Now this is a well kept secret within Europe. Right. The president of Serbia was recently talking about him changing his allegiance from the EU to China.
That is a bad decision for him
I
in the
know.
long run. Chinese don't care about
Right.
nothing but the self. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's another issue for another podcast.
Telling me.
Right.
But to sidetrack, not just to sidetrack a little bit. So like you, I like languages, right? But for some reason, my ancestor has been speaking to me for like years now. And I've been, because I like to study people as well, and I've been saying, why is it that the Chinese, because they, quote unquote, a lot of people, you guys are going to see me, right? They're kind of flourishing in their land, right? And I'm like, why is that y'all keep running from one country? Something is up. And I'm like, there are people as well, because I've been watching their movies and just to see how they just act, and they have a lot of classism in their culture. So I find what they do, unlike the way people, they're smart. They come into your land, they feed you their food, they kind of make friends with you, but still keep you out. And then all of a sudden, they kind of colonize you, right? What people are doing is getting into their culture, but you're not learning these people's language. So when, because it's a thing that they will be doing, they decide to boldly colonize your land, you cannot speak their language. Why you don't do that for yourself? So I have been studying Mandarin and Korean and anything to do with Asian world, because these are the people that are behind majority of what is happening
in the world.
Don't really have control over certain things anymore. Why? Because they are going extinct and people are not paying attention to the numbers.
To that.
Thank you. why people are
Right.
fighting so much. The government are fighting so much to keep Black people down because they realize that majority of the people in the world are Black. One and two, we are
Mhm.
powerful if we remember who we are, and three,
Mhm.
if we do, there will be nothing. So that's right there. I have no issue with interracial children or marriages. I have no issue, but that as well, I want people to face as well, is that is an agenda as well to keep prolonging their race. So
Right.
that
Right.
is something that we have to pay attention. I'm not telling you not to go there and into marriage or whatever, but pay attention to the big agenda. And you thinking, no, I love this person. Yeah, it's okay. But what is your programming? Pay attention to your program to make sure that your love is actually your love and it's not something that you've continuously watched that made you believe that that is so. So pay
Right.
attention to their race. That's all it is that people are trying to tell you. No one is saying you're supposed to marry them. We're not saying that. We are telling you pay attention to the bigger picture and the reason why they're forcing into marriage with white and Black people. That's it.
Right.
Right.
Right. So that's it goes both ways, the intermarriage thing, because what a lot of people are pushing is that they want to homogenize humanity, right? They want to blend humanity up, basically, like a melting pot. So when they do that now, people will stop seeing race. That's one of the things that they think they can use to make it work, right? But it's not necessarily so, because even if you mix people up, you will still have some darker than some have different features, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and you
Right.
have to
So
nip the issue in the bud. The
the issue
solving
itself,
of blending isn't going to solve it, because then your child is
right,
going to grow up kind of confused between the two races. Whose sides do I pick? Because the world is still about the racism.
right. On the point of the international community, and I got all the way to the Slavs being discriminated in Europe and so on. So the international community is basically the group that is pushing this whole preservation of white privilege, right? So, for example, they're coming into Latin America and the Caribbean and intervening in political situations to try and to influence the outcome in their favor.
Yes,
right?
AKA the election
So,
we just
exactly, exactly. So that was one instance, right? If you look at Haiti right now, there's a dictator president in Haiti that is doing all sorts of and the people are revolting and so on. So that's another example. If you look at we just looked at the Suriname election here, and I mean Suriname overwhelmingly by a big majority said we don't want Butterse anymore, right? The man lost a big chunk of his votes, his support. Right. So the Suriname elections, and the thing about it is that the opposition here in Guyana were quick to jump on the high horse and say, "Look how Suriname finished the election in 2 days." And guess what? When the election finished, and they realized that the president of Suriname realized that he was going to lose, right? He demanded a recount, a total recount. So right now, Suriname is going through the same situation. Right. Now, in this case, in our case, it was the opposition
that was
who created the big stink of, oh, y'all fraud and we want a big recount. And then it took a while because they had a lot of legal ramifications, right, for the recount to take place. Right. Of course, the conditions under which the recount is taking place would have had to be what's the word? Neutralized, because there was a lot of external influence. Right. Anyway, so that's a whole next topic.
Yeah, that is another topic that I want people to pay attention to. And I want people to really focus on the fact that we found oil peoples. We found oil.
Yes, that's another. That's one of the big
Thank you.
things that led to this,
Thank you
right?
very much. Understand.
The other thing is that, of course, the colonizers support whichever political entity will push their racist agenda in the country,
Yeah.
right? So that's another reason. That's two. And then number three, you have the issue of Venezuela. Now, the UN has been coming against the international community for Venezuela recently, right? So that there is a whole next story because, of course, a lot of innocent. I mean, of course, if the leader of a country, right, has breached humanitarian law, you deal with the leader. You don't sanction the entire country. The country is innocent. The people are innocent. You have a lot of Venezuelans are suffering, right? A lot of them are coming over here, and it's a sight. There was a time when the people doing the odd jobs on the road were black people, and now most of them are Venezuelans, right? A lot of them are by the traffic light juggling and wiping, wiping windscreens and so on to make a living, right? And the government has been trying to aid them as much as possible, right? Now that's how you know a caring government, right? First of all, they remove the inequality to an extent, right? Um, Balancing the employment situation in the country, and then of course, those who are suffering, they help them out, right? Anyway,
Yeah, for example, like
the
the corona situation, they were
right,
actually
the
going
corona
around giving
situation.
out
So we
food.
have the perfect balance here, even though of course in some cases Guyanese people are a little unruly. So um, we just break.
We just put it as black people. Barbados doing their own thing. The man was forced literally to stay in the house. Understand? We just saying about this. But the thing
But
is that majority of the world see through the corona bullshit and other people don't, right? So that's
right,
why
right,
people are being rebellious, because when they had Ebola and the other viruses, everybody got in line very quickly. But this
right,
specific virus, people are questioning. So it's not that, oh,
a
we're
lot,
taking
right.
it serious, is that
Hmm.
this don't make no sense compared to the others. Why
The
is
others,
this so
right,
fishy? So
right.
yeah, that's all it is.
But of course, our government is smart, so they didn't lock down. They put a curfew,
Got you.
right? So we have essential businesses are open. People are still getting their necessities and getting, all the
Things that they
things
need.
that they need,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, there's the social distancing and everything. So it's a perfect balance. So that's how you know a caring government, right? Even if the virus is fishy and so on, right? The government would still be required to,
Follow the
do what they need to do,
guidelines. Yeah.
right?
But that's a whole other
Anyway,
topic I trying to have with somebody
that's the whole
who,
next topic.
yeah, because I want somebody and I to sit down and break down the corona thing so people can really open their eyes to why
Right.
they are doing these guidelines and what the end game is. No one is looking at the end game of this
Right.
thing.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Right. So of course they had slavery. Um, they brought us, they give us the religion and all the rest of it. Then, of course, black people rebelled, right? Because justice runs in our blood, right? So we rebelled and we got a level of justice. Let's put it that way. We got a level of justice. So we got physical freedom. We got freedom to own
I love that
property,
he said physical
to
freedom.
own things, right? We got a level of emotional freedom, level, because even though we gained emancipation, we still were being persecuted emotionally. We were still being told that we too dark, we hear and look good, we gotta fix it, we gotta straighten it. We were still being told
About speech,
competent,
how we
we
speak.
lazy.
Mm.
We gotta speak this way,
Especially
and
Caribbean
all
people and South American people.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
right. So all these things were happening to us, and so we still were not 100% free.
No, because we
We
had
still
guidelines to follow if we wanted to survive.
right now. What they did is that they made sure they brought other people.
Mm-hmm.
So in case they left, and if you notice, the other races came in the locations that they left.
Mm.
They still are in the locations that they didn't leave, that
Mm.
they didn't bring other races to. Let me show you what I mean. Guyana has, so they brought Indians, they brought Chinese, they brought Portuguese. Um, in Trinidad, they have Indians and Chinese as well, and I think Syrians. In Barbados, they have, what else do they have in
Black.
Barbados?
They just have black people, some white people,
Hmm.
and yeah, but Barbados is mostly black and white. There
Okay,
aren't much
so
Indians and stuff. The Indians mostly come from Guyana.
come from elsewhere. So what they have in Barbados is the Redlegs, the Irish,
There we go.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So most of the Leeward Islands as well, the small islands, have the Irish people, right? Um, the bigger islands have the other races, Indian, Chinese, and so on. Jamaica has Indian and Chinese people as well, right? So that's what they did. Now, in America, they didn't bring other races. It's just them and the blacks and the indigenous people.
Yep.
In Canada, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
In Latin America, all the Spanish places, it's the same thing. Now, the difference with the Spanish people is that they sort of abandoned the stratification. Now, mind you, the Spanish people are Roman descendants predominantly, even though they had the Germanic rulership,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at some point, the Roman spirit resurrected itself in the Spanish people, and they abandoned the stratification to a large extent,
Mm-hmm.
and they blended. So you have everybody within Latin America identifying as Latino mostly,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you meet a person from Mexico, they will tell you, "Oh, I'm Latino,"
Mm.
or a person from the Dominican Republic
They'll
or
say that too.
Cuba, they'll
That's
just
true.
tell you, "Oh, I'm a Latino person."
Mm-hmm.
They might look black, they might look white or near white, they might look indigenous, but they will tell you, "I'm a Latino. My race is Latino," right? So, and again, even though you have the mix up, you will still have persons with more
Identify.
features of one or the other
Mm.
in some cases, right? So even though the Latin Americans blended, you still have that.
Mm.
Anyway, but in the Germanic ruled countries, ruled by the British and the Dutch, and in the French, even though French is a romantic language, people don't understand that France um, is more culturally Germanic because the Frankish kingdom was a Germanic kingdom. Frankish was a Germanic language,
Mm.
and it was only um, until the Romans really got more heavy influence in France that the language became French and it became Romantic.
Mm.
However, they most of the features of French society remain Germanic, and people don't understand that as well, right? So in the French islands and the French territories, you will still find the divide is very prevalent as well, right? So um, this all of the divides that remain are features of these same Germanic white people, right? They brought it here, they created it, and they left it here, and we're still suffering from it. Now, let me go to India for a bit because I can break down
Please,
the
you read
different.
my mind because I want you to break down India, literally.
They brought Indians here, so
Mm-hmm.
let's go to India a bit. Now, the first set of people to step on the subcontinent of India were people related to the Australian Aborigines,
Mm.
right? Um, the evidence of this is particularly in the Tamil Nadu region. You will find that there are some people who look African
Mhm.
with some Indian features, and they're jet black in color,
Mm.
right? They're jet black in color. They have hair like African hair. They,
Get into it. I'm so excited about
they
this, right? I'm so
right?
excited.
And well, now most of them speak Tamil, but it's evident in the Tamil and some of the Dravidian languages that there are still words remaining from the language of those people. Right now, that's a whole linguistic topic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then, if you go a little south of India, southeast of India, you will find a territory that belongs to India called the Andaman Islands. On these islands, you have the Jarawa and the Sentinel people.
Mm-hmm.
These people are black people, but they speak languages that are unrelated to the rest of the world. And they
Boom!
um,
This.
and they also have features that are similar to the Australian Aborigines,
Oh, I love it.
right? So from South India all the way down to Australia, so you trek through from South India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, well, the Andaman Islands, Indonesia, um, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, and down to Australia. There is one continuum of ancient peoples that still remain there,
Mm.
and it and they are the remnant of the first set of people that left Africa and got into that area,
Mm.
right? Now, because these people were the first set and they've been now that area is tropical, right? And because they've been there for all this time, they still have tropical features, so they still look like black people.
Mm. So that's why you would see the Indians fighting with their black version of Indians, which they
Right.
have that war. You will see that. First of all, you don't even have to watch the news to see that. You see that in the movies that they show.
Exactly.
It's there.
So anyway, so I'm just now beginning,
Mm.
right? So that's the first thing. So these pre-Dravidian people still have black features.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, you have the Dravidian people themselves in South India, the Tamil people, the Malayalam people, and so on. These are also dark-skinned people, right? They have straighter hair and they have more Indian features, but they're dark. They're very dark, and they came into India from the Middle East, right? So these people would have been related to the and this is genetically proven. You can research it. They're related to the Berber peoples of North Africa, the natives of North Africa, not the Arabs, the natives of North Africa. They're related to the South Arabian natives. They're related to the ancient Elamites, right? If you know of the Elamites in the Bible, you would know what I'm talking
Yes.
about.
Yeah. I know what you mean about that.
And of course,
I
they're
just
related
fucking
to the
everything.
Ethiopians and the Somalians and so on. So this is another belt from Morocco all the way across the South India of dark-skinned peoples that are African in origin, right? So that's already two groups of Indian people that are
black.
African origin, that are black, right? Then you have the Mundas. Now, the Munda people are also dark skinned, but they have Asian features. And they live mostly in the northeast of India, and in some cases the central east of India, right? So the Munda is Munda, the Munda people, and their language is, funnily enough, Austroasiatic, which is related to languages like Vietnamese and Cambodian and so on.
So
So this
basically,
is
that would be
another
like the old version of this one.
of right. So these are the
Got you.
original, what we call Austric
Yes.
peoples. So the Vietnamese and the Cambodians would be a mixture of these people and some of the Chinese and some of the Thai peoples and so on, right? But these are the original Austrian people.
Because I just want to bring people to perspective so that you can see what he says. You will find that the Philippines and the same people that he mentioned are darker in color in comparison to the Japanese, the Asians, and the Koreans.
Right.
They are darker. So, yeah. Mm.
Right. So you have that as well. And not forgetting, too, that some Filipinos may have lighter skin because the Spanish people mixed with them.
With them as well. Mm.
Right. And as a matter of fact, too, in the Philippines and in, I think, in parts of Indonesia and so on, you have people called the Negritos that look African as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That word is a breakdown right there, too.
Yeah. Right. So you have those. You have that group as well, and then you have across the Pacific, which I didn't plan to go to the Pacific, but just to include every group in the list. You have the Melanesians and you have the Micronesians. The Micronesians and the Melanesians are people who they're the black people with the blonde hair. You would have seen those pictures. And the blonde hair.
I want to find out the
Melanesians.
Got you.
Actually, I think it's Melanesians. It's or Melanesians. Melinesian. There's no O, but
Got you.
Right.
Got you. Says Melanesians.
Right.
Got you. Got it.
So these people include the Fijians, the Hirimotu peoples of Papua New Guinea. Now, look, this is another story, but the Melanesians are actually a mix of the Papuans and the Austronesians. Right. Now, the Papuans, of course, are the people from Papua New Guinea that look black. And the Austronesians are people like the Taiwanese, the Indonesians, the Malaysians, the Samoans, and so on. So the Melanesians are a mixture of those two peoples.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Anyway, so back to India. Now, the Dravidians had what was called the Indus Valley civilization before they got pushed into South India. So they were all over India. And and they had this beautiful civilization. As a matter of fact, this was the third major civilization in the world, the Indus Valley civilization. So you had Egypt, then you had Sumer, and then you had the Indus Valley. And then you had, I think the Assyrian Empire came next, right? And the Assyrian Empire was really the first introduction of stratification, social stratification, right? The first three were egalitarian societies: Egypt, Sumer, and the Indus Valley, right? They didn't have the divide that the Assyrians introduced, right? Right. So the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and this is why people say it's a Babylon system, because the Babylonians actually were the first to introduce an unfair legal system, right? The Assyrians did have a legal system. They stratified the society, but they didn't make the legal system so unfair, right? They just had people stratified based on their abilities, their level of intelligence, and and so on. But the Babylonians took it further to dictate how people should be treated based on the social stratification.
And you will find that mostly in the Asian world, because they practice that a lot over there. Right.
And this too was like on the border between Asia and the Middle East. Right. So you find that it festered. Anyway, so in India, so in the Indus Valley, you had this egalitarian society. If you're really interested in what it looked like, watch the movie Mohenjo-Daro. Right, it's a beautiful.
It's not a movie where it flooded or something like that.
Yes.
Where he met somebody
The
in the village with that guy, that fella.
Richard Roshan.
Yeah, that came in,
Right.
that superhero movie. I forgot his name.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
good. So that we on the
So-
same wavelength. Yes, I watched that.
Right.
Mhm.
So if
That
you
was
look
good.
at it,
Uh-huh.
you would have seen
The buried city, right?
elements. Huh?
It was a buried city that was buried underwater.
Right. It was
Got
flooded.
it. Got it.
Right. So this was the main city in the Indus Valley civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look carefully at the movie, you will see elements of African culture.
Of course, I see it. That's why I watch it. It is right there. Yes.
It is. Right. There were elements of Egyptian culture, African culture,
Mhm.
even elements of the Asian cultures like the
Mm.
Chinese and so on were there because the Indus Valley had a lot of trade with the Eastern Asian peoples. Right. So that was the original Dravidian civilization. Right. So you had pre-Dravidians, you had Munda, and some of the Tibetan peoples living in the north of India. Right. So like the Bhutanese, the Nepalese are a mixture of Tibetan and Munda, and
Which
so
are all black races. Because the whole time we're
originally,
talking about,
yes, originally.
There's a
So
trend.
the
Okay.
Tibetans and the Chinese are the closest related in the entire Asia.
Mm.
Right. As a matter of fact, their language family is called Sino-Tibetan. So you have Sinitic, which would be Mandarin and Cantonese and so on. Then you have Tibetan, which would be Bhutanese and Burmese from Myanmar and so on. Right. So you have those. Of course, the whole southwest of China is Tibet as well. So there's a Tibetan language, I think it's called Lhasa, if I pronounce it correctly, but it's Lhasa, right? And that, I think, is the most widely spoken Tibetan language in the world, right? Even though Bhutan has independent status as a nation, the Bhutanese language is still not as widely spoken as Lhasa. Right?
Everything is
anyway,
connected.
Yes, everything is connected, and that's how people don't realize the stupidity of division and racism.
Yeah.
Right. So,
So
anyway,
with
so
that being stated, all of that being breakdown, so people can see that we were all black, but then we all became divided, and then all of a sudden these races that are in Asia and is Europe were majority or the mass majority black people. Everybody's divided and clearer, and they don't like the skin color. Let's get into that part there and to show them how that became something now.
All right, so that's exactly where I was getting to in India specifically, because so there's this group of people called Indo-Europeans. Most of the Europeans, the Armenians, the Iranians, and the North Indians mostly belong to this group. So a group of these Indo-Europeans migrated from the Caucasus area, from the Eurasian steppes in southern Russia, and came to India. And they brought with them the Sanskrit language.
Brought with them the what?
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit?
Right. Okay. Sanskrit, which is the language, the held language, or the language held as the sacred language of Hinduism. So these people were called Indo-Aryans, right? I don't think that when they first got to India, they were already speaking Sanskrit, but they were speaking an ancestor language to Sanskrit. So Sanskrit would have developed out of whatever language they would have spoken when they first arrived. So when they arrived, these people were, and if you check the north of India, these people were white. They had clear eyes. They still, in some parts of North India, they still have that appearance, right? Especially in the very north, in Jammu and Kashmir, and so on, right? So these people came to India and they invaded. It was called the Aryan invasion of India,
Mm.
right? They invaded India and they imposed, again, their beauty standards. So it's the same people, the same
Mm-hmm.
family of people,
Yes.
right? Um, it's pretty much the same white people,
Yep.
but it's just a
Yep.
different branch of them.
In a
Now,
different location,
in a different
mind you.
location,
Understand?
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Indo-Aryans, of course, they lived there for a long time. They basically took the Vedas that the Dravidians had and turned it into Hinduism,
Mm.
right? Now, mind you, even though they imposed their beauty standards, they did not exactly promote racism in India. It was just about appearance. It wasn't like they treated you less for your
Mm-hmm.
appearance,
Mm-hmm.
right? They just encouraged you to quote unquote fix your appearance, if you understand,
Yo, no, I
right?
with you. Mm-hmm.
So right, so it wasn't as strong, right?
But
Until
basically make you self-hate. You just making them self-hate themselves.
right,
Mm-hmm.
basically, right. But it wasn't evident in the structure in the system,
Mm-hmm.
right? They wouldn't treat you less, but they will tell you, oh, you can lighten your skin, put some turmeric on, and so on,
Right.
right?
Mm.
That practice is still popular among Indians, even in Guyana.
Hey you, yes you. So thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope that you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for coming to my page. So I would like for you to subscribe, and I also want you to watch the last video, and I hope that you enjoy everything on my channel. Thank you.